The universe had always been a vast and unforgiving place, but humanity had fought its way to the top. The Terran Alliance, once a scattered group of nations, now ruled vast stretches of space. But that peace was about to be shattered. Captain Ryland stood on the bridge of the Vanguard, staring out at the stars. His face was grim, his heart heavy with the weight of the mission ahead. His hands clenched into fists as he looked at the digital map of the Krix fleet. The Krix, an alien race as brutal as they were mysterious, had been attacking human colonies for years, leaving nothing but destruction in their wake. Now, they were on the brink of launching their final assault on Earth itself. Ryland's orders were clear: destroy the Krix flagship before it could reach the Terran homeworld. The fate of humanity rested in his hands. He glanced at his crew. They were all young, nervous, but ready. They had trained for this moment their entire lives, but no amount of training could prepare them for what lay ahead. Ryland took a deep breath, trying to steady his nerves. The Krix were ruthless, and no one knew exactly how powerful they truly were. The Vanguard flew deeper into Krix territory. Ryland felt the tension rise. He thought about his family back on Earth. He thought about his younger sister, Lila, who was studying to become a scientist. He thought about his parents, who had always been so proud of him. He couldn't let them down. He couldn't fail humanity. The ship's AI, Kira, interrupted his thoughts. "Captain, we are approaching the Krix flagship. All systems are ready for engagement." Ryland nodded. "Prepare the crew for battle. No mistakes." The crew went into action, each person moving with precision and speed. The countdown to battle had begun, and there was no turning back. As the Vanguard closed in on the Krix flagship, Ryland's mind raced. He knew the odds were slim. They were outnumbered, outgunned, and outmatched in almost every way. But there was one thing the Krix didn't understand: humanity's will to survive. Suddenly, the communication system crackled to life. A voice deep and menacing echoed through the ship. "Terran, Captain, you think you can stop us? You are nothing but insects, and we are the storm that will crush you." Ryland's grip tightened on the console. The Krix leader, Zorath, was speaking directly to him. Ryland had heard of Zorath, a ruthless warrior who had led the Krix in countless campaigns. His reputation was one of terror and death. "You'll never win," Ryland said, his voice steady despite the fear gnawing at him. "We'll fight to the last breath." Zorath laughed. "Then you will die for nothing." The Krix flagship fired first. Beams of energy lit up the darkness of space as the Vanguard rocked under the impact. Alarms blared, and Ryland quickly shouted orders to his crew. "Return fire. Target their engines." The Vanguard fired back, but the Krix ship was heavily armored. It wasn't enough. The Vanguard was already taking damage. Ryland's heart pounded in his chest. Time was running out. In the midst of the chaos, the unthinkable happened. A signal came through, one that wasn't from the Krix. It was from an unknown source. A ship, appearing out of nowhere, materialized next to the Vanguard. It was a Terran vessel, but not one Ryland recognized. "Who the hell are you?" Ryland demanded, his voice sharp. The ship's captain responded with calm authority. "We're the Phoenix. We've come to help." Ryland didn't have time to question the sudden arrival. "We need to take down the flagship now." The two ships worked together, dodging Krix fire and launching coordinated attacks. Ryland felt a new surge of hope. With the help of the Phoenix, the battle began to shift in their favor. But just as they thought victory was within reach, something unexpected happened. The Krix flagship released a secret weapon, an enormous pulse of energy that cut through space like a knife. It headed straight for Earth. Ryland's blood ran cold as he realized what it was: a planetary destroying bomb, one capable of wiping out all life on their homeworld. The Vanguard was the only ship close enough to stop it. Ryland made a split-second decision. "Kira, prepare the Vanguard for a full-speed collision course with the bomb." The crew was silent for a moment, then Kira responded, "Understood, Captain." "But that will be a suicide mission." "I know," Ryland replied, his voice steady. "But it's the only way. The crew watched in disbelief as Rylan gave the order to accelerate. The Vanguard moved toward the Crick's flagship, the enormous bomb looming in the distance. There was no time to second-guess, no time to turn back. Rylan gripped the controls tightly, watching as the countdown to Earth's destruction ticked away. Just as the bomb was about to reach the planet, the Vanguard collided with it, unleashing a massive explosion that lit up the stars. The shockwave from the blast was felt all across the galaxy. The Crick's flagship was destroyed in the process, and the remaining Crick's forces retreated, unsure of how to handle the loss. For a moment, there was silence. And then, the communication system crackled to life once more. This time, it was Lila's voice. "Rylan? Is that you?" Rylan couldn't believe it. His sister was alive. They had won. But as the Vanguard drifted in the aftermath of the battle, Rylan couldn't shake the feeling that the war was far from over. The Cricks might have been defeated, but their threat was only the beginning. The last war of humanity had been won, but the future was uncertain. And Rylan knew that the next battle was already on the horizon. The fight for survival was far from over. The Terran fleet had always been known for its strength and unity, but a storm was brewing within its ranks. Lieutenant Sarah had been trained for this moment her entire life. As one of the top officers in the fleet, she was trusted with crucial missions, and her loyalty to the Alliance was unquestionable. But even the strongest warriors could be broken, and Sarah was about to face a betrayal that would shake everything she believed in. Began on a cold, quiet morning aboard the Crusader, the flagship of the Terran fleet. Sarah stood before the large window of the command deck, looking out at the stars, deep in thought. The Corians, a dangerous alien race, had attacked a Terran colony on the edge of the galaxy. Their leader, Commander Kyle, had been captured in the attack, and now it was up to Sarah and her crew to bring him to justice. As the Crusader prepared for its departure, Sarah received a private message from her commanding officer, Admiral Walker. The message was brief but urgent. "Meet me in the briefing room. We have new intel." Sarah's heart raced as she made her way to the briefing room. She had no idea what was coming, but she could feel that something was off. Admiral Walker was a seasoned leader, respected by all, but lately his decisions had been raising questions among the crew. Some of the younger officers whispered about his strange behavior, and Sarah couldn't help but feel that something wasn't right. When she entered the room, Walker was already there, standing by a holographic display. His face was tense, his eyes dark with worry. "Sarah," he said, his voice low, "there's something you need to know." She raised an eyebrow, her curiosity piqued. "What's going on, sir?" Walker hesitated before speaking. "The Corians. They've been working with someone from within our own ranks." Sarah's mind raced. "Are you saying there's a traitor among us?" "Yes," Walker confirmed. "And it's someone close to you." Sarah's stomach dropped. She thought about her crew, her fellow officers, people she had trusted with her life. But then, a chilling thought crossed her mind. The only person she had always trusted completely was Captain Evan, her former mentor and friend. They had fought side by side in countless battles, and Evan had always been her guide, her protector. "No," Sarah whispered, shaking her head. "It can't be Evan. He would never." Walker's eyes softened. "I'm afraid it's true. We've intercepted communications that link him to the Corians. He's been feeding them information about our fleet's movements and plans." Sarah couldn't believe what she was hearing. Evan, the man she had once considered a brother, a man who had saved her life more times than she could count, was a traitor. She felt a cold fury rise within her, but also an unbearable pain. How could she face him now? How could she confront someone who had been like family to her? "Where is he?" Sarah demanded, her voice shaking with anger. "That's the problem," Walker replied. "He's gone. We lost contact with him after he was assigned to the Vanguard mission. But there's more. He's planning something big. We believe he's working with the Corians to launch an attack on Earth itself." Sarah clenched her fists. "I'll bring him back. I'll stop him." Walker gave her a sharp look. "Be careful, Lieutenant. Evan is dangerous now. He's not the man you knew." With a heavy heart, Sarah boarded a shuttle with her most trusted team members. They were heading toward the Vanguard, a ship that had once been a symbol of Terran pride. But now, it was the vessel of a traitor. As the shuttle entered the Vanguard's hangar, Sarah felt a knot tighten in her chest. This wasn't just a mission to stop an enemy, it was a mission to stop someone she loved. Inside the Vanguard, everything seemed normal at first. The crew went about their duties, unaware of the treachery that had taken root among them. Sarah made her way to the bridge, where she found Evan standing in front of the command console, his back to her. "Evan," she said, her voice steady but filled with emotion. He turned slowly, a cold smile spreading across his face. "Sarah, I wondered when you'd come. You've betrayed us," she said, her voice breaking. "You've betrayed me." Evan's smile faded. "I did what I had to do, Sarah. The Quarians are the future. Humanity's time is over." Sarah's mind reeled. "No, this isn't you. You've always fought for humanity's survival. For the Alliance." Evan's eyes hardened. "I've opened my eyes. I see the truth now. The Quarians are stronger, smarter. We were never meant to rule the galaxy. The Quarians will lead, and you," he paused, his gaze flickering with sadness, "you will join me, Sarah. You have no choice." Sarah stepped forward, tears welling in her eyes. "I'll never join you. You're not the man I knew." With a sudden motion, Evan pulled out a weapon, aiming it at her. "Then you leave me no choice." The room exploded in chaos as Sarah's team rushed to intercept Evan. But Sarah stood frozen, her mind racing. This wasn't just about stopping the Quarians anymore. This was personal. This was the man who had once been her friend, her mentor, the one she trusted most in the world. "Evan, please," she cried. "Don't do this." But it was too late. The betrayal was complete. The man who had once been her family was now the enemy. And Sarah knew that this fight would not only determine the fate of humanity, it would also decide whether she could ever forgive herself for what had to be done. Captain Kale paced back and forth on the bridge of the Titan, the flagship of the Terran fleet. The tension in the air was thick enough to cut through with a knife. His crew was on edge, and Kale knew why. They were about to enter unknown territory, the last stronghold of the Zelkari, an ancient alien empire that had been dormant for centuries. Now, the Zelkari had resurfaced, and they were threatening the peace the Terran Alliance had worked so hard to build. Kyle gripped the arm of his chair, staring at the star map in front of him. The Zelkari had been known for their technological superiority and ruthless tactics. But what worried Kyle even more was the secret the Zelkari were hiding something that could destroy everything humanity had worked for. "We're entering Zelkari space," the navigator announced, her voice trembling. Kale nodded, his mind racing. It wasn't just a military threat, it was a mystery. A mystery he had to solve before it was too late. The Titan glided into the unknown region, its engines humming as it passed through asteroid fields and the silent remnants of ancient space battles. The crew kept their eyes on the scanners, but nothing could have prepared them for what they found. A giant ship, unlike anything they had ever seen, appeared on the radar. "Sir, we've detected a massive energy signature," the officer on duty reported. "It's coming from that ship." Kale's heart skipped a beat. "What is it?" "It's a Zelkari warship," the officer said, her voice barely above a whisper. "But it's different. It's like nothing we've ever encountered before." Kale's mind raced. What could the Zelkari be hiding on that ship? And why was it so far from their homeworld? Before Kale could give orders, the communication system crackled to life. A voice, deep and cold, echoed through the bridge. "Captain Kale, we have been expecting you." The word sent a chill down his spine. The voice was familiar, but he couldn't place it. He turned to his crew, confusion written all over their faces. "Who is that?" Kale demanded. The voice continued. "You don't recognize me, do you?" "It's been a long time, Kyle. Too long." A wave of realization hit Kyle like a ton of bricks. His blood ran cold. The voice belonged to his brother, Zarek, who had been lost in battle years ago. He'd been presumed dead until now. "Zarek?" Kyle whispered, his voice barely audible. You're alive? There was a long pause before Zarek responded. Yes, Kale. Alive, but changed. Kale's mind raced. His brother had been part of the Terran military, a soldier like him. But now, he was working with the Zelkari, the very enemy they had been preparing to fight. How had it happened? How had Zarek gone from fighting for humanity's survival to siding with the enemy? Kyle's thoughts were interrupted by the sudden appearance of a Zelkari ship in front of the Titan. It was huge, its surface covered in strange, shimmering symbols that glowed with an eerie light. Captain, we can't outrun it, the navigator shouted. They've locked onto us. Kale didn't hesitate. Prepare for evasive maneuvers. Get us out of here, now. The Titan jerked as the engines powered up, but the Zelkari ship was faster, more powerful. Kale knew they couldn't escape without taking heavy damage. He had to make a choice, fight or negotiate. Captain, one of the officers said, what are your orders? Kale looked out at the massive warship in front of them. It was clear that the Zelkari had no intention of letting them go. And with Zarek leading them, Kale wasn't sure if there was even a chance of peace. Prepare to fire all weapons, Kale said, his voice steady despite the storm raging inside him. Just as the Titan aimed its weapons at the Zelkari ship, Zarek's voice came through the comms again. Kyle, listen to me, Zarek shouted. This is not the enemy you think it is. The Zelkari are not the ones you should be fighting. We are. We are your family. The real enemy is something far worse. Kale felt his stomach drop. What are you talking about, Zarek? Zarek's voice was full of urgency. There's a power greater than the Zelkari, something that has been controlling them from the shadows for centuries. And now, it's about to wake up. If you don't listen to me, it will be the end of everything. The end of humanity. Kale's mind raced as he tried to process what Zarek was saying. A shadow that had been controlling the Zelkari? What could be worse than that? And why was Zarek trying to warn him now? He turned to his crew. Hold fire, he ordered. The crew looked at him, confused and unsure. But Captain, I said hold fire, Kale repeated, his voice firm. There's more to this than we know. Kyle turned back to the comms. Zarek, if you're telling the truth, then help me stop this. Help me save humanity. There was a long silence before Zarek finally spoke. I'm on my way, Kyle. But time is running out. They've already begun the awakening. The line went dead. Kyle's heart pounded in his chest. He had just made a decision that could change everything. Was his brother still the man he once knew, or had he truly been consumed by the Zelkari? And what was this greater threat that had been pulling the strings from the shadows? As the Titan drifted closer to the unknown ship, Kale couldn't shake the feeling that the real battle was just beginning. And it was a battle that would force him to confront not only his enemies, but also the shadows of his own past. The fate of humanity hung in the balanced odd eye in the heart of the Terran Empire. Hidden deep within the vast reaches of space, there existed a mystery that had remained unsolved for decades. The lost Prince of Terra, a child of royalty, heir to the throne, who vanished without a trace when he was just a boy. For years, his disappearance had been considered a tragedy, and the royal family had kept their pain hidden from the people. But rumors were now starting to spread, whispers in the shadows that the lost prince was alive. Captain Elena Rios had heard the stories, of course, but she had never put much stock in them. She was a seasoned officer of the Terran fleet, more focused on missions and survival than old legends. That was until she received an unexpected assignment. A secret mission to explore a remote planet, known only as HFY. The planet had been off the grid for centuries, but recently, strange signals had begun emanating from it, signals that seemed to match the long-lost communications of the royal family. As the Cerberus, Elena's ship, entered the atmosphere of HFY, she felt a strange unease. The planet was barren, lifeless, and yet there was something unsettling about it. The crew was on high alert, scanning for any signs of life or danger. Elena couldn't shake the feeling that they weren't just on a mission to explore a forgotten planet, they were being drawn into something much larger. Captain, said Lieutenant Torres, the ship's navigator, her voice tense. "We're picking up something strange. It's not like anything we've seen before." Elena's attention snapped to the monitor. There was a blinking signal coming from the planet's surface. It was faint, but it was there. "What is it?" she asked, her voice steady. "It's a distress signal," Torres replied, her fingers flying over the controls. "But the source. It's coming from an old royal communication tower. The same one that was abandoned when the prince disappeared." Elena's heart skipped a beat. This was no coincidence. There was no way the signal could be coming from that tower unless someone had reactivated it. Someone who didn't want to be found, or perhaps someone who had been hidden for years. "Prepare a landing party," Elena ordered. "We're going down." The team made their way to the surface, stepping into the dark, silent world of HFY. The air was thick with dust, and the planet's gravity was slightly weaker than Earth's, making everything feel slightly off-kilter. As they walked through the ruins, Elena's mind raced. What had happened here, and why was the royal family involved? They reached the abandoned communication tower, now overgrown with strange alien plants. The metal structure was rusted and falling apart, but it still stood tall against the desolate landscape. They entered the tower's base, their footsteps echoing in the silence. Suddenly, a voice crackled over the comms. "You shouldn't have come." Elena froze. The voice was faint but clear, and it was familiar. A voice she had heard in old recordings, in royal tapes from years ago. A child's voice. But it wasn't just any child's voice. It was the voice of the lost prince. "Who are you?" Elena demanded, her pulse quickening. "Where are you?" The voice laughed softly, almost bitterly. "I am the one you've been looking for, but I am not the boy you remember. I am something different now." The team moved cautiously through the darkened halls of the tower, following the signal. The voice continued to taunt them, leading them deeper into the bowels of the structure. Every step they took felt heavier, the air colder. Finally, they reached a room at the heart of the tower. In the center, standing before a holographic control panel, was a figure draped in a cloak, his face hidden in shadow. His voice was no longer a child's, but deep and commanding. "You've come to find the lost prince," the figure said, his words sending a chill down Elena's spine. "But what you don't understand is that I never truly belonged to Terra. I was never meant to rule." Elena stepped forward. "Why did you disappear? Why did you hide?" The figure looked up, revealing a pair of familiar, piercing eyes. Elena gasped. It was him. The lost prince, now a man, standing before her, but changed. His face was older, harder, and there was something in his gaze, a coldness, an emptiness that she hadn't expected. "I didn't disappear, Captain," he said, his voice now full of bitterness. "I was taken. Trained by those who wanted me to become something more, something powerful enough to overthrow the Empire, to end the Terran royal family. But now I see it was all a lie. All of it." Elena could feel the weight of his words. There was more to this story than she had ever imagined. The prince had been manipulated, turned into a weapon. And now, he was standing before her, a man torn between the past and the future. "Why come back now?" Elena asked, her voice barely above a whisper. "Why send the signal?" The prince's eyes flickered with a hint of pain. "Because I know the Empire is falling, and I cannot stand by and let it crumble into nothingness. There is still a chance to change everything, but only if you're willing to listen." Before Elena could respond, alarms blared, and the walls of the tower shook. Outside, a fleet of ships appeared in the sky, their engines roaring as they descended. The prince turned to face her, his face cold once more. "They're coming for me," he said, "and they will destroy everything in their path to ensure that I don't escape." Elena's heart raced. The prince had been right all along. He wasn't just the lost prince, he was the key to something far bigger. Something that could either save or destroy the Terran Empire. The fate of Terra now rested in Elena's hands. Would she protect the prince and risk everything, or would she turn her back on him and let the Empire fall? The answer was clear, but the cost of the decision would haunt her forever. The Terran Empire stood on the brink of destruction. The enemy, a mysterious and powerful force known only as the Collective, had infiltrated their ranks and was tearing through the heart of humanity's last defenses. The fate of the galaxy rested in the hands of one man, Commander Jackson Hale, a hero to many, but now even Jackson found himself questioning the truth behind the war he had fought for so long. Jackson stood on the bridge of the Valor, his flagship staring out into the vastness of space. The stars were dimmer now, as if even they were losing hope. The Collective had been relentless in their attacks, striking when least expected and disappearing into the shadows before anyone could retaliate. It had been months since Jackson had received word from command, and now it was clear the Terran fleet was running out of time. "Commander," came the voice of Lieutenant Mara, his trusted second-in-command. "We've intercepted a transmission. It's coming from their flagship." Jackson's eyes narrowed. The Collective's flagship had been an enigma. No one knew where it was located. But now, a transmission had been detected. This could be the break they'd been waiting for. "Put it through," Jackson ordered. The screen flickered to life, revealing a figure cloaked in shadow. The voice that followed was cold and calculating, every word dripping with menace. "Commander Hale," the voice said, sending a chill through Jackson's bones. "It's time to end this charade." The screen went black before Jackson could respond. His heart pounded. He recognized that voice. It was one he had heard years ago, in the early days of the war. A voice he had never hoped to hear again. "Mara, is the transmission traceable?" Jackson asked, his voice tight. "We're trying, sir. But it's unlike anything we've encountered before. It's coming from a point beyond the outer rim." Jackson's mind raced. Beyond the outer rim? That was a place no one dared venture. The risks were too great and the rewards too small. But now, the Collective was daring to operate from there. That could mean only one thing. They had something big in mind. Something dangerous. "We're going," Jackson said, his jaw set. "Prepare a course. Full speed ahead." As the Valor surged forward into the unknown, Jackson couldn't shake the feeling that this mission was different from the others. It wasn't just another battle. It was the final confrontation, the one that would decide the fate of the entire galaxy. He didn't know if they would make it back alive, but he couldn't let that stop him. The Terran people were depending on him. They always had been. Hours later, the ship emerged from the darkness, arriving at the edge of the outer rim. A strange, unnatural silence hung in the air, broken only by the hum of the ship's engines. "Sir," Mara's voice broke through the stillness. "We've found it. The Collective's flagship is... It's massive, and there's a strange energy field surrounding it. We can't get any closer." Jackson's stomach tightened. This was it. They had reached the heart of the enemy's power, but the field was preventing them from advancing. He had no choice but to make a decision that could change everything. "Deploy the boarding teams," Jackson ordered. "We're going in." A small team of elite soldiers, led by Jackson himself, prepared to board a shuttle and infiltrate the enemy ship. As they suited up and made their way to the shuttle bay, Jackson felt the weight of the moment. This mission could end their war, or it could be the beginning of their defeat. Inside the shuttle, Jackson sat quietly, his thoughts racing. He knew what was at stake. The Collective had promised an end to humanity's reign, and they were close to achieving that goal. But what was the cost? What had they sacrificed to gain such power? These questions burned in Jackson's mind, and he couldn't ignore them any longer. When the shuttle finally docked with the flagship, the team moved quickly, clearing the hallway with military precision. The ship was eerily quiet, its halls dark and cold. As they advanced, Jackson couldn't shake the feeling that they were being watched. Every step seemed to echo in the silence, and every shadow seemed to hold a threat. They reached the control room, and the door slid open. Inside, the figure cloaked in shadow from the transmission awaited them. But this time, Jackson saw who it truly was, that it was his brother, Alaric. Jackson's voice broke with disbelief. "You're alive? You've been with them this entire time?" Alaric's eyes gleamed, but there was no warmth in them. Yes, Jackson, I've been with the collective, and I've learned the truth. You've been fighting a war for a lie. Jackson's breath caught in his throat. A lie? The Terran Empire was built on oppression. You think you're fighting for freedom, but all you're doing is preserving a system of control. The collective doesn't seek to destroy humanity, it seeks to free it from the chains you've bound it with. The real question is, are you willing to join me? To make the choice to let go of the past? Jackson's heart raced. His brother, the man he had once looked up to, was now the enemy. The war, the lives they had sacrificed it, had all been for nothing, if what Alaric said was true. Jackson, Alaric said, stepping closer, his voice soft. You don't have to continue this fight. You can be with me. We can reshape everything. Jackson's mind spun. His brother had become something he could never have imagined. The temptation to join him, to put an end to the endless war, was strong. But could he betray everything he had ever believed in? Could he betray the Terran people? Alaric raised his hand, offering him a choice. Jackson's eyes locked on his brother's, and in that moment, everything became clear. There was no easy answer. There was no perfect solution. There was only the choice that would define the future. With a heavy heart, Jackson raised his weapon. I'm sorry, Alaric, he said, voice shaking, but I'll never be part of your lie. The final choice had been made,